Hello and welcome to ET Energy World. I am Sudhir and today we are in conversation with Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri. He's the Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas and the Minister for Housing and Urban Affairs. A very warm welcome on our platform, sir. Let me begin this conversation by trying to ask you, the G20 summit has just ended. What happens now, right? And if you could give us a perspective on, what are the top 2 or 3 ways in which, India has used that opportunity and that platform to kind of get things moving forward on our energy imperatives. Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, I think the starting point of any discussion on the G20 should be that A, it was a resounding success. B, that India acted and succeeded as a unifier in a deeply divided world. Number 3 or C, that the 83 paragraph declaration has solid and very rich content on any area that you are interested in. Whether you take Mahila Shashaktikaran, whether you take issues of terrorism, whether you take issues of urban resilience, the future cities, etc. And therefore, the international community, the designated international organizations, will receive these paragraphs, the stakeholders will take them there, and an upgradation of aspirations will take place, where you have succeeded in raising the expectation. And fifth, I think the G20's overall success will be measured by the fact that we had a resounding success, we had India navigated through difficult issues. But I think the primacy of the G20 as an economic forum, and I choose my words carefully, has been re-established. Some people tend G20 and every forum is a political forum. You come and you exchange views on your view against my view and so on. It's primarily an economic forum. It was an organization, it is an organization which was established in times of a crisis. Today the world is facing an even more serious crisis than it faced in 2008. Where a finance ministers level group, G20, was upgraded to summit level. And the beauty is that India has succeeded in navigating and producing a consensus document, by which I mean no footnote, no interpretative notes. Let me fast forward. Everyone has welcomed it. I just saw statements by African ministers, I saw statements by the Chinese government, People's Republic of China, I've seen statements by the UN agencies, I've seen statements by UK Prime Minister, by everybody. Everybody said it was a great success. Not white governments, Bill Gates, celebrities, people in the film world. But there are 2 other issues, I think, which will bear mention when you talk of the G20 New Delhi declaration of leaders. One is the Global Biofuels Alliance, which was strictly not a G20 agenda, but it was taken under India's G20 presidency. 19 countries have signed on to it. 12 international organizations, and the really big ones, have signed on to it. And this is just the beginning. The Biofuels Alliance was formally unveiled by the Honorable Prime Minister with Presidents Biden and Lula next to him, by the Singapore Prime Minister, Bangladesh Prime Minister, host. And finally, I think the other thing which merits mention is this economic corridor between India, the Middle East, between India, Middle East to Europe, Italy, France, Germany, I've already read, European Union, and backed by the Americans. Now, again, a lot of political buzz, is this a counter to this, is there a counter to that? I think there's some mistake being made. You don't need a counter to something which is not taking off. The other thing it is supposed to be a counter to has produced a debt trap. If I remember correctly, all the white elephant projects done, including in India's neighborhood, they are white elephant projects, and if you can't pay back, then they ask you to, or you offer your territory to them. That's a sellout. That's in terms of national sovereign territorial land. So I think you should look at the corridor as a futuristic, what I would call a perspective plan for the next 15 years. Connectivity between shipping lines, between ports, between transit, railway connectivity, all manner of other connectivity, freight haulage, seamless movement of people. You get that from Asia to Europe, through the Middle East. You know, look at the history of this area. You had the Suez Canal, you know, you saved, now you're proving something really futuristic. And the Biofuels Alliance, again, is not only thus the issue today. I mean, I said that in one of my statements that today the IEA, I said it's a $92 billion, this thing, IEA says it will go up to $200 billion. I had a statement from the Biogas Association saying it's already $500 billion. Okay, let me put all that aside. I saw the excitement in the economic entities which deal with biogas. Their shares are surging. And I think you're already looking at $1 trillion opportunity provided you play it right. I had industry associations with me this morning, one of the apex bodies. They're all very excited about it. And I think these two, the Biofuels Alliance and this economic corridor, making for connectivity, will give the G20. G20 outcome by itself, in and of itself, is tremendous. But these two things taken together, the G20 baton has been passed on to Brazil, or be more or less done. November, the Honorable PM wants to have another virtual meeting. But after that also, G20 will run with this. G20 will run with the other formulation. Brazil will do something even more. It will focus on inequality, as I read. And Brazil has always had a particularly sharp political focus on economic inequality.
So these are very ambitious projects and ambitious ideas, and therefore also very difficult to implement, right? Because it requires international collaboration, etc. I'm talking particularly about corridor, right? So even if you look at the idea of the GBA, the Global Biofuel Alliance, the question is, what will broadly be its contours like, right? For example, I mean, in what ways? For example, we already have ISA kind of a body. We are likely to compare it to that, thinking that, you know, will there be a mobilization of resources for that? Where will it be based? All of those. If there's anything that you can share.
No, I would respectfully disagree with you on both, on the so-called long-term visionary description of Biofuels Alliance and the corridor. I think the Biofuels Alliance is not a future thing, it's a today thing. Okay. And you already have India racing and increasing its biofuel blending. We were at 1.4% in 1.5% in 2014. Total amount of biofuels produced and procured was 38 crores. We are today already at 562 crores. And we are moving to a target of 1,000 crore liters, 38 crore liters, 562 crore liters and 1,000 crore liters for 20% blending. And you add to that already 100 crore liters of biodiesel blending. I don't think that's of the future, that's of today. Economic corridor, I would say yes, you start the work, but it's not futuristic in that sense. This is where international collaboration will come. There will be people, including in different countries, who will say, how will this work, how will that work? But you know, if you have a visionary idea which is also realistic, I mean, you identify the subcomponents, shipping connectivity, road connectivity, rail connectivity, telecommunication. It's all open. And I think they're all very, very keen to see this grow and see this produce economic results. And I have no doubt that this is, whilst it is futuristic in terms of a roadmap into the direction, but its implementation can start straight away.
Okay. So you talked about ethanol blending, and that's one of the success stories of this ministry, right? I want to understand, what is the timeline for reaching the 20% target?
2025. Target was 2030. We will do it by 2025 end of the year. ethanol blending year, what's you call the ethanol year. Yeah.
Sir, on the front of, there's another related area to ethanol blending is your CBG, right? Compressed biogas kind of, and we have a very ambitious plan there too, right? We are trying to set up around 5,000 CBG plants, which is a lot, and a lot of investment is expected to go there. Where do we stand currently, right? And if you could give us some sense of...
I would say that my characterization would be that the targets were well conceived. The start was slow. We are now at the takeoff stage. The plane is on the runway. It's gathering momentum. It's already started the roll. We have about 70, 80 plants. But the good news is not that. The good news is that the idea is taking shape and the idea is seeping in. I know of at least 100 plants in different states identified where the state governments have rolled out their own policies. They've identified the land and our companies are ready to do that. Look, I say this after a lot of reflection. The Indian biofuel story cannot be identical to the American biofuel story or the Brazilian story. Brazilian story is primarily based on sugarcane. Yeah. Why? For the simple reason Brazil has 3 times our land area, 1/6 our population, and it 22% of the world's freshwater reserves. India has a different challenge. The American program is entirely, I think, by maize. We have diversified. We will make ethanol from maize more. We will make it from broken food grain. We will make it from agricultural waste, parali. We will make it from gases. And we will supplement our program through CBG. Now, that is the overall picture. So, one component is taken off remarkably. When you set the targets in 2014, you had a target of 8 years to get 10%. All right, you did it 5 months in advance. Then you thought the next 10% will take another 8 years. You're doing it in 3 years. So, as I said, as you go along, you gather momentum. Plus, I think the most important thing, and this I am glad, when the government has outlined a program, the stakeholders get involved. And the good news here is that the market is there now. The 20% inhibition was because we thought, or we were told, that if you have 20% blending, you don't need to make many changes in the design or in the operation of the engine. Now, when you have demonstrated that you can procure 562 crore litres and another 100 crore litres of biodiesel, now people are coming back. Earlier they said, no, we'll set up an ethanol plant, but pehle aap buyback guarantee dijiye. Abhi bhi wo dhoondenge. But now your OMCs are going around, yaar, produce, we'll buy from you. Something buyback guarantee chahiye, wo bhi de denge. But the point is, a market is being created. And we will do it in a cost-effective way. We'll have a virtual marketplace. And see, the good thing is we are not in it. 85% of the world production is in it, between the Americans, the Brazilians and us.
Okay. So because we're talking about biofuel, I'm tempted to ask, there's this very famous debate about food versus fuel. What happens to that? I mean, even with G20 outcomes, a lot of people...
I am not only a student of the food security debate, that's the real debate, कि आप ethanol बनाएंगे तो food का क्या होगा? देखो, food की कोई कमी नहीं है. दुनिया में कहीं कमी नहीं है. I mean, I don't go by these situations where there's turmoil and there's grain not coming because of a war somewhere, etc. उसको छोड़ दीजिए. इंडिया के मैं हालत बताता हूँ. When I was young, we were subjected to something called PL 480. You remember that? Today, you look at your production of grain, okay, wheat, rice, whatever it is. You are not only a world's one of the top producers, one of the top exporters. So if you put a little restriction on the export of rice, etc., either way, so you come a long way. But the real story here in the food versus fuel thing is your agriculture needs it. When we spend 9 years to reach the 10%, we saved 73,000 crores on imports and we gave our farmers 76,000 crores by way of compensation to the farmers. We did a study the other day that if you have 1% biofuel blending in aviation fuel, call it sustainable aviation fuel, 5 lakh farmers get benefited. I'm not talking about that 76,000 crores which we paid them. Another 5 lakh farmers get. If you make that norm 5% blending instead of 1%, 70 lakh farmers. So listen, here is a classic case of the Annadata, Urja-data, both roles being performed and both sectors benefiting.
Sir, if I can ask the last question very quickly, on this, we are now talking about, biofuels, and that's also done. The question is on the domestic energy security front, right? We have seen the Ukraine crisis that happened. And how in your assessment we have as a country managed to wade through that crisis? What were the key challenges before us, both in terms of supply and cost? If you could give us some kind of a perspective.
I'll give you a short answer. We have diversified the sources of supply. Yeah. Earlier we used to import crude oil from 27 countries. We are doing it from 39 countries. When I was a joint secretary in the MEA working on the Americas desk, I would never have thought that we will buy $20 billion of energy from the United States. We buy $35 billion from Saudi Arabia, which we've been buying for a long time, but $20 billion from the US. Plus we bought from Russia because Russian oil became available, we needed it. So the short point is we will buy from wherever we have to. A democratically elected government owes a moral responsibility to its citizens, who are the consumers. And the government has successfully addressed the 3 challenges of availability. There was never any shortage anywhere. Affordability, we brought prices down because of excise reductions by the central government and on 2 occasions, and BJP states reducing their VAT. And sustainability, all this biofuels we are talking about, movement in the direction of green hydrogen, etc.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you.